Hey, I'm John Cannell, and today on Preppy Kitchen we're making some easy, delicious Financier. So let's get started. These delicious cakes get their flavor from two things, almonds and browned butter. So grab half a cup or 113 grams of unsalted butter. I cut mine into pieces so it melts faster. We're gonna melt our butter over medium heat and then cook it until it's browned, nutty, and delicious. If you haven't had brown butter before, it is life-changing. It adds a wonderful nutty depth of flavor to savory or sweet dishes. So whenever you see butter in a recipe, you could always brown it and have browned butter chocolate chip cookies, browned butter vanilla cake, anything, and it's gonna be so good. You can even use it to make frosting. Melt your butter, and I will say I'm using a European style butter for this recipe. It's not necessary, but this type of butter has more butter fat in it and less water. The water is what pops and explodes when you melt it, and I'm sick of having butter splatters. So I treated myself to some European style butter for this. So once your butter's melted, you're gonna stir and cook it until it is a golden brown color and has a wonderful nutty smell. The milk solids will caramelize, so you can see already on the side of the pan, there's little dark specks. That's the flavor. You're caramelizing the milk solids, and it's so delicious. You do want to keep stirring because those milk solids will go from golden and beautiful to dark brown and burnt very quickly. So as soon as it gets to the golden stage, immediately take it off heat. And I like to have a heat-proof bowl ready to pour things into because the residual heat in the pan will continue to cook the butter past that magical point. Some people like me really like dark browned butter, which has almost a bitter note to it, but for this recipe, golden brown is the way to go. Pour your browned butter into a heat-proof bowl. If you look at the butter in the light, you'll see it's a nice golden color. My butter is scalding hot right now, so we need to set that aside for 30 minutes. And one note is that if you're using a regular American butter for this, during that cooking process, you would have seen it foam up really intensely. That's like all the water bubbling out of it. That's fine. If that's the case, just stir, 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 and know that the foaming part is towards the end, so push it aside so you can see inside and notice the color. By the way, if you love delicious things, make sure you hit that subscribe button. There's 2 new recipes every single week and shorts too. My butter's cooled and I preheated my oven to 350 so it's nice and hot. Now, in a large bowl, we can get the rest of the dry ingredients together. I'm adding 150 grams or 1 1/4 cups of powdered sugar. I also want 1 1/4 cups of almond flour, which is 125 grams. These brown butter almond cakes are actually quite old. They were made by an order of nuns called the Visitandines. My pronunciation is giving me such anxiety, I have to tell you. But there was a famous chef who was set up by the Paris Stock Exchange, and he took this treat and turned it into a different shape and renamed it. So instead of being a circle, like we're gonna make today, he made it in the form of a rectangle shaped like a gold bar and called them Financier. I thought that was so interesting because it's really just a rebrand of an existing treat. To give these a little bit more structure, I'm using 6 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, that's 45 grams. And as usual, I'm using my scale because that gives me the most accurate results. For some contrast, I'm gonna add a generous pinch of salt. My scale is done, it's time to grab a whisk. Okay, work that together and break apart any lumps of almond flour that are around. Almond flour is a term used very loosely. This is really almond meal. It's like ground up almonds. It's not milled to the same consistency as flour, and it really does tend to form clumps. You don't really have to, but I'm just breaking apart these clumps with my hands. It's bothering me. Okay. Now I need 4 egg whites for this, so crack your eggs, and we're gonna separate them out, then we'll add them in. These aren't gonna get frothed up, so don't worry if a yolk breaks and you get a little bit of yolk in there. It's okay. And I highly recommend you save the yolks and make a delicious custard. There's so many options. French buttercream, flan, crème pâtissière. All these are videos on the channel. Now it's time to add the egg whites in, along with your cooled brown butter. It's okay if it's slightly warm, it just couldn't be fiery hot. Get all those caramelized milk solids out too. That's where the flavor is. And for an extra kiss of flavor, 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Give this a whisk, and I'm warning you ahead of time, the batter will be thick, so don't panic. The smell is so divine. I love almonds and brown butter, so combine those with a little bit of powdered sugar, it's amazing. If you want, you can make this batter up to 3 days in advance. Just store it in your fridge in a sealed container. It works because there's no baking powder or baking soda to activate, so it's gonna be the same either way. Set your batter aside, and right now you'll grab your baking tins, either mini muffin shaped like this, or if you have it, a rectangular gold bar shape. I don't have that, so grab some very softened, almost melted butter, and we're just gonna brush the wells here. You don't need that much because honestly, most of the baking tins have a non-stick coating, but it's a nice insurance policy. All right. My last well is buttered, so now it's time to transfer the batter, but I like to use a piping bag so it's less messy. Otherwise, I find it impossible to get this in without spilling everywhere. Snip the tip off your bag, and now we're gonna distribute the batter evenly. This will vary based on the size of your baking tins, but you should get about 24 Financiers from this recipe. Now you have a choice. You can either have your Financier be plain. You could top them with a few little slivers of almond, just like that, to make a kind of a heart shape. Or you could plop a raspberry right in the center and press it down. That'll bake up and have a lovely pop of flavor. Either way, they'll be delicious. I like to do all three. So some will be plain, some will have raspberries, and some will have the almonds. My Financiers are ready to go into the oven, 350 for 15 to 20 minutes or until the edges are golden and a skewer inserted in the center comes out clean. In you go. Golden beautiful when they're out of the oven, oh my gosh. That is so good. All that brown butter and almond coming together like this. It is just a perfect marriage of flavors, and it's so delicate, soft, and melt in your mouth on the inside. I hope you had a chance to make this recipe, and if you like this video, hit that subscribe button and check out my French dessert playlist.